I should probably preface this review by saying I have never read Stephen King's It, and I am in no way judging the quality of that novel. I'm actually just analyzing and judging the quality of the film adaptation and the way that ultimately it translates the characters, plot, and themes of that novel into the medium of film. It might also be helpful if I mention kind of just how I felt about part 1 of this series. I liked part 1. I didn't love it, it didn't blow me away, but I did think it had some solid scares and a really great overall chilling tone thanks to its director Andy Muschietti and a really brilliant performance from Bill Skarsgård. The performances from the younger actors also were very solid, and that ensemble's chemistry was truly great. For part 1, though, the highlight was absolutely the underlying message, which I thought the filmmakers just beautifully laced in very expertly into the plot and throughout all of the character arcs. To transition into part 2, then, I thought that there were found in this film some of the same positive elements found in its predecessor. The chemistry of the cast, for example, was just really excellent. There were a couple of scenes in particular that I thought Muschietti did a great job just capturing the same magic felt in part 1. One of those scenes taking place in a Chinese restaurant, which I'm sure was just chock-a-block full of improvisation. It just had that lightness of touch, and you could tell genuine laughs were being captured on screen. And overall, you could also tell that every single one of those actors liked the others around them, and were just thrilled to be part of this franchise. And that chemistry really did translate quite beautifully up onto the screen. And of course, I'm sure you've heard everyone talk about this already, but Bill Hader was indeed a standout, and people are talking about him for good reason. Not only was he as an actor most clearly suited for this film's style and tone, his character was also given the most dynamic and interesting character arc of all of the losers. That's not to say that the other actors did not do their absolute best to pull their weight as well. In fact, one of the things that I quite often throughout this film found myself appreciating was just the palpable earnestness of all of the other actors. They so clearly wanted to get this thing right. So even while that earnestness didn't always translate into great performances and didn't always make up for just greener, weaker acting choices, I still really did enjoy watching Isaiah Mustafa, Jay Ryan, and James Ransone giving it their all. And I certainly felt like Jessica Chastain's Beverly was given the creepiest and just most interestingly directed scene in the entire film, which unfortunately was also the scene that was most heavily spoiled in the trailers. And that, overall, really is where my enjoyment of this film ended. For me, It Chapter 2, from an execution standpoint, always felt just a little bit rushed and unpolished, and even worse, from a narrative standpoint, self-indulgent and ill-conceived. For all intents and purposes, it just felt like this reprise of part 1. But with the characters, plotline, and narrative never really being able to justify their own unique existence for this part 2. It always just felt like this extended coda, never able to really blaze its own fresh or different trail. And that may have been okay or even interesting if we were actually allowed to get to know this group of characters like we did this group of characters. Unfortunately, despite the director, writer, and actor's best efforts, the losers always felt just a little bit distant and removed from me in this film. And one of the reasons for that just came from the required narrative structure, which was constantly cutting back and forth between the past and the present, forcing the filmmakers to use two different sets of actors. And whenever this happens, I just, even if subconsciously, feel slightly disconnected from both of them, never able to identify with either of them as much as they need me to. Furthermore, these seemingly unending flashbacks meant that otherwise brilliant actors like James McAvoy or Jessica Chastain were primarily confined to looking rather distant and pensive, only to be cut away from so we could watch their digitally de-aged younger versions do something more interesting. None of this was helped either by the very dull, linear way that all these flashbacks were cut together. So first we would see Billy's flashback, and then we would see Bev's flashback, and then we would see Ben's flashback, and then we would see Eddie's flashback, and then we would see Mike's flashback, and then we would see Stanley's flashback, etc. Rinse and repeat. So instead of any of these plot lines building off one another, they would just halt each other's momentum and the overall momentum of the film. Also, this film just did not have the same visual polish and classiness of its predecessor. There were so many scenes, the climax being one of them, that were just painfully sloppy and kind of just hard to watch. And finally, speaking of that climax, with films like this, i.e. ones that are based off novels that are extremely dense, it is so important that they clearly, concisely, and hopefully visually, establish the rules of this world, and for quite obvious reasons. If we, the audience, don't understand clearly or fully what the characters are doing, or more importantly, why they're doing it, how are we supposed to invest in the narrative in any real way? And if the mythology and rules are not established, we'll just be yanked around for nearly 3 hours, the film constantly and seemingly inexplicably going this way and that, always just in an effort to keep us on our toes, which may lead to surprises, sure, but not rewarding surprises. At the end of the day, this movie felt like it wanted to be a television series finale, except without a number of seasons to really get me invested in and understanding the characters and plot lines. Which meant, essentially with It Chapter 2, I was forced to sit there and watch a 169-minute clip show lacking any real sense of nostalgia or deep-rooted connection. And for all these reasons, I will give the film a 2.5 out of 5. I would still love to know what you guys thought of the film, though, so definitely comment below and let me know. And finally, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love if you stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.